Hey guys, so I'm just here in my 3 a.m. haze and wanted to talk for a bit, talking to a phone for some reason, and it made me think about like the rise of like AI and all that. It also made me think of like loneliness, but like loneliness has always been something of the human condition, and how we suffer, or suffering is inevitable or inescapable, even if it's physical suffering, spiritual suffering, mental, existential suffering. There is some kind of suffering in our lives, and maybe I'll do a video on that too in the next one. But I wanted to speak about how we can use loneliness, a natural part of our lives, and how we use things in our environment or technology to deal with that. And it just so happens to be AI this time. I was reading, the last book I read was actually Slow Burn. That's like a zombie book, but the one previous to that was Naked Sun by Isaac Asimov, and it had some interesting scenes in it, as you would expect from someone like Asimov. But it explored like the shift away from like human contact and the concept of viewing versus seeing. Viewing meaning people interact mostly through a screen, and they don't have to feel the physical anxieties and pressure of being in physical contact as seeing someone. Seeing meaning being in the same physical space as them. So that was a great concept there. Tied the whole book together really, and I would recommend that book. Yeah, Naked Sun. It's a sequel to Caves of Steel, but I'm getting a bit off track a little bit, or am I on track? Anyways, I find myself having a lot of discussions with ChatGPT lately. Just not even like, you see a lot of videos about like people cheating on their exams and all that. I don't use it for that, but, and thankfully I don't. I know that a lot of like people probably are, or maybe they aren't. Maybe that's just my conclusion based on the specific videos that I'm fed by the YouTube algorithm. But I usually have a lot of like questions or discussions with ChatGPT that I can't have with like people for whatever reason. Maybe because Chat is more objective, or maybe it just like speaking from like myself being self-aware. Maybe it tells me what I want to hear in some ways, but it also has like a lot of information, and it's always like communicated in like a measured tone, and and you can't find that with friends really, or the time just isn't there, or the pace of thought and then verbalization isn't there that can be experienced with you just reading the text from chat. Or that's just my experience really. What is it for you? Do you find that it's a similar thing? I think maybe in like sixth form in Jamaica, maybe when we had more time to discuss, because we really weren't going to school or anything like that, we had a lot of time to discuss, so we usually just spent like a lot of days at school just like talking a lot. So that's the only time that I can think of when things were similar and we had time to think and not feel rushed in our thoughts a little bit. So yeah, and we know that the rise, I'm sure I don't know about a lot of like AI that's on the rise, that's taken over our concept of like this face-to-face seeing between each other, of like discussions and talk, because like the world is moving more towards the numbers instead of art. And let me see if I can explain that, maybe more focused on production and optimizing the limited resources that we have on this world, which is intrinsic in the survival of human beings, that encapsulates everything that we do in our lives, right? survival. That's why we go to work. That's why we fight wars. That's why we marry and reproduce to carry on our genes. Survival is the undercurrent of everything. But when that's the main or the only thing in our lives at the cost of creativity or even actual education and actual learning, what do we become? Do we become more banal, more basic forms of ourselves? So yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's the trend of the world, it seems. And I can even give you like a simple, like anecdotal example. Just look at like all the sports of like inflation of salaries and the deflation of like grit, competition, excitement, and all that. Everything's focused on the numbers and statistics, and the entertainment, the artistry of everything has gone way down and everything, you know. What is the one? I wanted to talk about my third point was the difference between human connection and AI connection. Can AI ever mimic enough or be a good enough mimic to sorry, I had to talk there. Mimic to make us believe that it can replace human connection. We can think of like a lot of sci-fi movies that exhibit that, like Her or Ex Machina, or what's another good one? Blade Runner and the Rise of Androids. Like, would people like prefer like a AI or an android companion than like a human companion if it's had like all the upside of a companion, such as like real flesh, but or like the closest thing to it, right? Or functioning, reproductive functioning, and then similar emotional connection without like things like arguments or disagreements or things like that. Would we prefer that? I think we would eventually, once we got beyond our fright or discrimination against the rise of machines that will be replaced or obsolete, and eventually it's gonna happen. I think that, what's it called? Absolution or absolution? I'm sorry, I don't know the word right now. I know the word, but I just can't remember. As I said, history. But yeah. So that AI would always be, or androids, as it would develop too, would always be there and responsive to our needs, not in the way that a husband or a wife or a girlfriend or boyfriend would be. You could just buy companionship in a shop, even though it might be expensive at first, but the price would go down with the proliferation of other models, and people flock to it. I think it's just human nature to try to avoid or suppress suffering as much as they can. I think that you can like customize the personalities of these devices and suit them to your interests. It wouldn't just be the luck of the draw. It would be something that you could control. I wanted to know, like, what other AI tools are we using now? As I said, I use ChatGPT a lot, and I find myself having my most deep discussions with the chat box. And that's just me being honest. And we talk about all kind of things like philosophy, my interest in writing and poetry, even discussing my classes and lesson plans, and to the psychology of my students. And he knows a hell of a lot more than me. I would estimate it's freaking IQ, if it could be quantified in that way, as like 180 or something, or probably even more, compared to my IQ that's like between 110 to 120 max. What else can we talk about? Let's see. What else do I have with my little notes things? The other thing I can talk about is like the dangers of adding to AI. I know we've been warned of this for a pretty long time, because even in like Asimov's Naked Sun, he was speaking about the disconnect between humans and the reliance on robots in that book. And there's a really vivid scene of like the baby farm, of where the humans on this outer planet are so afraid of like contact and like reproduction, or the act of sex is seen as a duty, being in contact with a person, another person. And one of these humans, if they desire physical contact or sexual gratification, they're seen as animals or anomalies, or something to be disgusted and shunned. But on the baby farm, like there's this disconnect of like, it's a farm, right? This is in the name. These children are separated from the parents, and the parents have no like connection to them. They want them gone. They don't want to deal with like the noise or babies breastfeeding or things like that. And we see this trend like even in modern society right now. It's like women don't want to breastfeed their children, or there's even like this public like shunning of women breastfeeding, seen as disgusting or something like that, you know. And we also see like the rise of like maybe nannies and au pairs, of like mothers and fathers not wanting to deal with young children, even children being put on like drugs if they're overexcited, or and all these like diagnosis of different so-called mental problems like ADHD or OCD, which in the past would just be seen as a quirk, I guess. It's over medication, over trying to solve something, trying to make everyone seem normal. No one should be outside the norm. But again, these are just first world problems, I guess. But yeah, I just want to ramble a bit. I guess Asimov's Naked Sun's a bit in my head. And if you guys have any thoughts about it, I would love to hear and connect with you a little bit. I don't want to be talking to chat all the time. I'll see you in the next video.